I had just moved into a quiet suburban neighborhood after landing a decent job at a tech firm. The houses were close enough to create a sense of community but far enough to offer privacy. I quickly made acquaintances with my next-door neighbor Mike, a man in his late 40s with a son in the army. He seemed friendly, always offering a wave and small talk about the weather or local events. Occasionally he joined the neighborhood barbecues, bringing a six-pack and sharing harmless stories about his son's military exploits. Nothing about Mike seemed out of the ordinary. But things took a strange turn one summer evening. I had just pulled out of my driveway to meet friends when I realized I'd forgotten the gift I'd promised to bring. Annoyed, I turned back. As I approached my house, the headlights illuminated a figure darting out of my backyard and leaping over the fence. I hit the brakes and stared, my heart racing. The figure disappeared behind Mike's barn, blending into the shadows. I sat in my car, unsure of what to do. Was it a thief? A kid playing a prank? Slowly I stepped out, calling into the night, "Who's there?" "I'm armed." A bluff, but I hoped it would scare them off. Instead, Mike's silhouette emerged from the barn and rushed into his house without a word. Confused and a little angry, I marched to his door and knocked. He answered quickly, his face a mask of feigned confusion. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice tinged with annoyance. "I saw you jump over my fence," I said firmly. "What were you doing in my backyard?" Mike scoffed, shaking his head. "I've been inside all night. You must have seen someone else." I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt, suggesting he should just ask if he ever needed anything. But his denial turned to aggression. He hurled insults and told me to get off his porch. His reaction was so out of proportion that it left me uneasy. I decided to keep my distance from then on. After that night, Mike's demeanor changed completely. He no longer waved or exchanged pleasantries. Instead, I'd catch him peeking through his curtains whenever I came home. His gaze felt invasive, like he was waiting for something, or someone. I couldn't shake the feeling that he had been up to something sinister that night. I started double-checking my locks and keeping a bat by my bed. My paranoia grew when I noticed small things out of place. The garden hose unwound when I hadn't used it. Footprints in the damp soil near my windows. One evening, I decided to test my theory. I deliberately left my porch light on and pretended to leave, but I circled back through an alley to watch my house. Sure enough, after a few minutes, I saw Mike step into my yard, looking around cautiously. He crouched near my shed and appeared to fiddle with the lock before scurrying back to his property. I knew I couldn't let this continue. The next morning, I reported the incident to the local police. They were polite but non-committal, saying they'd look into it. Frustrated, I decided to confront Mike again. This time he didn't bother denying it. Instead, he smirked, his eyes glinting with a strange intensity. "You think you're so clever, don't you?" he said. "Always watching, always assuming." His words sent chills down my spine. "What's your problem?" I demanded. "Why are you sneaking around my property?" His smirk widened. "Maybe you should mind your own business." Weeks passed with no further incidents. Then, one night, I woke to the sound of breaking glass. My heart pounded as I grabbed the bat from beside my bed and crept toward the noise. In the dim light, I saw a figure standing in my living room, rifling through my belongings. It was Mike. Before I could react, he turned and saw me, his expression a mix of surprise and fury. "You should have stayed out of it," he hissed, lunging toward me. I swung the bat wildly, hitting his arm. He staggered back, cursing, and fled through the broken window. Shaking, I called the police. This time, they took my report seriously. Mike was arrested the next morning. During the investigation, they found disturbing items in his home. Photographs of me taken through my windows, a notebook filled with detailed accounts of my daily routines, and even a set of spare keys he had somehow copied. Mike was convicted of burglary and stalking, but I couldn't shake the sense of violation. Even after he was sent to prison, I felt his presence lingering, like a shadow that wouldn't leave. I moved away a few months later, But I'll never forget the unsettling truth about the man who lived next door. A man I thought was just a friendly neighbor. Now, every time I meet someone new, I can't help but wonder what secrets they might be hiding behind a polite smile.